Hello, villain lovers. We are back for another episode. Today we are going to be talking about Wuya, who I specifically wanted to not do last because I've kind of given her the short end of the stick in a lot of my fan works, and it's kind of obvious why is that she's one of the last of the mainstays to come in. Like I've told you so far about a bunch of them who I've had long-standing personal relationships with, like even Mosenrath. I probably knew before I reacquainted with him in recent years. Um, it's Wuya and kind of a ghoul. Um, they're a little more recent, so Sometimes I don't give them as much attention as the favorite children. And I maybe I shouldn't use the word recent because Roman and Snatcher dropped on me, and they're certainly not old by any means. But I just mean like my relationship with them, my background with them is a little different, so that sometimes comes across. But ultimately, they're the part of the family. I could not do this without them. Um, well, I mean, I to go back to the Snatcher principle, I guess I could, but it wouldn't be as much fun. uh, all in all, that's why I'm saving Huntsman for last out of the core, because he's actually got a longer backstory with me, but we're not here to talk about him. So, Wuya is, I don't know, she's not exactly the intro villain of Shaolin Showdown, but would I really call her the secondary? Her role in the series is kind of weird and for how it's structured. And I'll explain this. Is the first season, which is much shorter than any of the other seasons, has her as basically this intangible spirit that was awoken and has this plan like, hey, there's these magical artifacts called Shangang Wu. They're all over the world. I can sense where they are. I gotta find somebody who will help me get them. And she's locked in this puzzle box that can only be opened every... Oh, I forget what the requirement was for opening the box in the first place. But the actual intro villain, Jack Spicer, is the one who opens the box. And he's just a Dorkosaurus. Like, he's your harmless Saturday morning cartoon villain. He's your, I play nice with the heroes when it suits me. Sometimes we go out for ice cream. He's that kind of bad guy. Just absolute dork, and I love him. He's the main comedic linchpin of the entire show. He's freaking hilarious. Danny Cooksey does such a good job. But anyway, you have Wuya as his ghostly mentor lurking over his shoulder, and she's like fueling him to do his different schemes. She's kind of trying like to be the Shigo to his Draken, except that with her being intangible, Jack is mostly just in charge of doing what he wants. He takes direction from her, but otherwise he just takes the scheme wherever he wants it to go. And so that's why he manages to own the first season as the rival villain. Now the first season ends with William manipulating Raimundo, who is my favorite of the hero team. That boy, that he had Tara's plot and Birth by Sleep done right. Like the show was actually nice to him. I don't know how much I want to get into it, but the show was actually nice to him, even through all that angst, and I love it, and I love him. Anyway, as you can kind of infer from what I have just said, Ramuto has a little Fall to Darkness arc, in which Wuya basically brainwashes him. She takes advantage of a mistake he makes, and is like, oh, they don't appreciate you over there on the Shaolin side, because every time you try to do something that's innovative and creative, they tell you, oh, that's against the rules. But if you come with me, and you come over to the villain side, to the Halen, I will let you do what you want. I will get you anything that you desire. All you have to do is this very specific thing I'm about to tell you to do. And it turns out to be a ritual to help her regain a human body so she is no longer a ghost. And of course, when she becomes a human, that changes the dynamic of the show entirely. The season 1 finale is dedicated to Rai giving her back her human form. And season 2 opens on what she does now that she's got it. And immediately, like, the dynamic is so shifted from when she was just trying to work through Jack. Like, now she has magic powers, and she's using them to warp the world as she desires, to make this barren wasteland with this towering palace of dark spires. She puts her little emblem on the moon. And, you know, if you're here watching this, you probably already know that I ship her with Yzma pretty dang hard. And, like, she does the goth version of the Yzma act. Like, suddenly, everything she touches has got to have her face, her aesthetic, something that relates back to her. Like, she's living it up. And at that point, she actually temporarily throws Jack aside because feels like she doesn't need him anymore. Later on in the series, the two of them they have an on again, off again partnership. I like it when they're together. I think that they make a good show out of annoying each other, and they really do annoy each other on a lot of occasions. But I think we've also seen enough that they're, begrudgingly attached to each other, like, oh no, I can't believe I care about you, that sort of thing. And that's how best I like to see them, is like, they love each other in kind of a familial way, but they really wish they did not, because it is so inconvenient to do so. Anyway, the first arc of the second season has our heroes bring down Wuya in her moment of ultimate glory. She spends most of the second season going back to a ghost. We introduce Chase Young. We introduce Hannibal Roy Bean. We get, like, this whole rogues gallery on the board. And then once we have a gallery on the board, Wuya actually regains her human form again, but depowered, because Chase Young is keeping her under control, and the show needs him to kind of be the greater villain than her at this point. Though the third season is basically Wuya, Chase, and Hannibal either forming alliances with each other or backstabbing each other, or, like, they're all three fighting to be the big bad of the series. They're all trying so hard. It's those of you who are TVDC current know that my personal decision was I brought all three of them into the fold, and then I killed Chase, and that was kind of a spur of the moment thing. Like, I didn't even register at the time, like, why I wanted to go that route, and then, rewatching some episodes, I'm like, oh, it's because Chase basically puts Wuya down every time that they interact. Like, I know a lot of people ship them, and I get why. It makes a fun enemy ship. They have a lot of tension in that way, kind of the love to hate each other way, but at the same time, there's way too many moments, for me, when Chase legitimately holds Wuya back or depowers her, and I just wanted to get rid of that toxic influence in her life. And while I have Hannibal just kind of chilling out, like, I don't need to be the guy in charge so long as you recognize that I'm here and I'm doing things sometimes. And I think that's been working out because, I remember very clearly the canon arc where Wuya and Hannibal were working together to try to assassinate Chase behind his back. And then he found out, of course, because we can't kill off one of our three warring big bads. Anyway, I guess the big takeaway is Shaolin Showdown is certainly not wanting for villains. It does a great job putting up a rogues gallery that feels, kind of Kim Possible-esque, and has even some fun one-offs, like Chameleon Bot. You know why Chameleon Bot matters to me, and if you don't, I will explain eventually in an episode that's not going to be titled Chameleon Bot. And ultimately, the role that Wuya plays in this, as I said, she's the big game changer from seasons 1 to 2, and then loses a bit of her moxie as she progresses. But there's a little more to this, and it connects to me because of, me kind of going full special interest mode on cartoons and animation during the DV&D years. So I've explained in the Mosenrath episode how DV&D kind of brought me out of the weeb circles, which, I'm kind of getting back into now because it's good to be holistic about all fiction in my mind. Um, or maybe I'm just obsessive about collecting. But anyway, um, I was really getting into cartoons and animation, and one of the names of shows that I hadn't heard of before that was getting thrown around our community was Shaolin Showdown. Mostly people really liked Jack Spicer, and I was like, oh, he looks like my brand. And he was, but he's not the one I ended up taking home permanently and putting on the top shelf. Like, this is a top shelf villain. Um, as I'm watching, I get through the first season, and I'm having fun, and I'm liking, I was a little frustrated with where they went with Rye at first until I saw the conclusion of that arc, and I'm like, oh, the show's actually going to be nice to him about it. Like, it's going to hold him accountable, but at the same time, it's going to let him take back some agency. And so that made me happy, and he became my favorite Shaolin warrior. But when it comes to Wuya, like, I used to describe her and Jack as, like, the two sides of me, the two sides of the Rachel. Like, I have silly brain, and I have serious brain. And, like, anytime I see a serious and silly dynamic between animated characters, I'm very likely to be like, oh, if you put the two of them together, you get a whole me, a whole Rachel. And I think there's still some truth to that. I have a side that overthinks and is serious about everything, and then I have a side in which I just want to be a goofball. Society's not kind to goofballs, so I repress it a lot. But it's there. Trust me, it's there. You've been listening to these vlogs. You've probably heard me letting that out a whole lot. So I'm like, yeah. Jack and Wuya, they're like two halves of a whole Rachel, and eventually I ended up temporarily, like, kinning Jack. And when I say kinning, I don't mean like I actually believe I was him in a past life. I just mean, like, I'm using it as slang for a character that I identify with. He was my Snatcher before Snatcher, except then Megavolt ended up in there between the two of them, or maybe before Jack. It's Snatcher now. That's what matters. That's the important part. Anyhow, the important thing to remember is that kind of the kickoff for getting into all these animated series was not just DV&D in and of itself, but it was Mosenrath and the Aladdin series, right? So, in the big Season 2 Game Changer, Wuya regains her human form, starts messing around with magic big time. She gets all snarky about it. She's, got the swagger. And I'm like, oh, this is such Mosenrath energy. This is such absolute Mosenrath energy. I love this. And I even kind of shipped the two of them for a while before eventually realizing that Mosenrath doesn't do girls. But I can still see the framework for why I thought they went together. And they make a really good platonic bro TP. They're very good hedonistic sorcerers, just that one of them leans more, the old magic, and I'm a temperamental time bomb, and the other leans toward, I'm a girl boss, I'm a diva, I get what I want. And I gotta say, that's another thing, like, about Wuya that I really like. I've mentioned how Yzma and Mim both speak to me as female villain representation, because they get to break some of the rules. Wuya is more traditionally, like, kick-ass, and that's kind of offset a little bit by, she does occasionally, use her looks to her advantage, trying to get Chase to do what she wants because she's pretty, and she's basically a character who owns the field. If she has her body, she's got all the power, and she's got all the confidence. And even though she doesn't suffer the same kind of slapstick as Yzma, and she's not as awkward as Mim, she's still, still really important to that view for me of femininity in villains, because she's just going out there and taking what she wants with her bare hands. And when she's stripped of magic, she will fight you hand to hand and win. And it's It's just cool. She goes to town. I love it. Um, so anyway, I obviously made that connection. Little did I know there was a reason for that. There is a scientific reason I thought Mosenrath and Wuya were similar. Are you ready? We're about to detour this episode into the Bill and Bob conspiracy. By Bill and Bob, I mean Bill Motz and Bob Roth, the animators who came up with Mosenrath. You might notice that their names put together kind of sound like Mosenrath. That's where they got his name, is they just slammed their names together. And, you know, I have reason to believe that he's their favorite character that they ever created. I can't say this for sure. I'm not Bill and I'm not Bob. I can't speak for either of them. What I can say, however, is not only did they bequeath him their names, but there is a pattern going. Mosenrath's introductory episode is called The Citadel. It aired on Halloween, so his birthday is Halloween to me. The Halloween part isn't relevant to this story. The fact that his episode is called The Citadel is. So where did Bill and Bob go after they were done working on Aladdin? Well, they bopped around to a couple other Disney afternoon series. They did some of my favorite Darkwing Duck episodes. They did some of the Megavolt episodes. I believe Frequency Fiends was the one they did. And that one's like all-time classic for me. So they were kind of getting all around in the animation circle. They eventually spread out to other studios. They got in on Shaolin Showdown. And they were around for a lot of the early season writing. And I found this out by like trolling IMDb and deep dive researching. And so, you know, you have Wuya, who gives off a lot of these same vibes of the confident sorcerer as Mosenrath. So the episode in which she makes her big power play and is like remaking the world in her image, what do you think it's called? The Citadel of Doom. So that's pretty dang close to Mosenrath's intro episode title. So keep that in mind. At some point, either before or after this, our boys Bill and Bob, they're working on the Legend of Tarzan series for Disney. And this doesn't follow the exact same pattern, but Lady Waltham, if you've ever seen the infamous Lady Waltham episode, and I'm calling it infamous because, like, the people who have seen her adore her. And I get why. She's awesome. She's all kinds of kick-ass. She rules the roost. But this episode, along with several others, was worked on by Bill and Bob. The reason I single it out is because there are a whole lot of animation frames where you can see that Waltham's face structure and, like, some of her line art, like, it is very Mosenrath reminiscent. And at one point, she actually does the same movements as he did in the episode Black Sand, when he was mocking how everyone Aladdin loved was in the sand dimension, and Jasmine had the most wonderful screams. And then in the Waltham episode, it's the one where she's talking about how, oh, Tarzan had better hurry to save his friends, but if he goes the route that he's going now, then Jane will die. And she's, like, doing the exact same hand motions. And I am way too deep into this, okay? And Bill and Bob also worked on Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. And again, this does not fit the exact pattern that I'm telling you about, but I will say, like, their love of Easter eggs continued in that one, because I believe it's a Werewolf that they actually have Booster mentioning a mission that happened off screen. It was never in the show, on the planet of Mothroth. And I had to pause the episode and break down laughing. And this is probably never a joke that anyone else has laughed at ever, because I am too invested in the Bill and Bob conspiracy and all the Easter eggs they left around. But okay, what's the wrap-up note of the part that makes it a conspiracy? And the thesis of the conspiracy is that Mosenrath is their favorite character they ever made. So, I mentioned, Mosenrath shows up in The Citadel. Wuya shows up in The Citadel of Doom. Pretty simple so far. So, you have Kim Possible. They're working on Kim Possible now. Really great show. Really an animation game-changing definition for me. And you get to the first TV movie that they did, A Stitch in Time. And later this was broken up as separate episodes, which I have mixed feelings on. Because, like, it's great that it got to air with the other episodes in the regular runtime, but it also kind of destroyed the feel of it being, like, this feature-length adventure that you've never seen before with Kim Possible. At any rate, she goes in this show. She's, the swagger, the snark, the banter, the meltdowns. Are you seeing where she fits with Mosenrath and Wuya? She could be Mosenrath and Wuya's daughter, actually, because she's, again, that kick-ass lady who doesn't take crap from people, but at the same time, things don't go her way, and you are looking at a destroyed evil lair. She's definitely Bill and Bob working their influence again. And in Stitch in Time, spoilers, except you should all know this, Shigo actually takes over the world in the bad timeline. So Kim and Ron go into the bad timeline to Shigo's future, and they're walking up to infiltrate her lair, and what are the first words out of Ron's mouth? Ron says word for word, "Oh, nice Citadel of Doom." My God. The words Citadel of Doom are a signature to tell where Bill and Bob's fingerprints are on a show. Like, you could have even written Mosenrath and Wuya's intro eps off as coincidence. When the phrase comes out of Ron Stoppable's mouth in an innocuous scene in a Bill and Bob production, it's like, oh my God, it's all related. It's all related, and it's all Citadel of Doom. Ron saying that calls back to Wuya's Citadel of Doom, and Wuya's Citadel of Doom calls back to Mosenrath's The Citadel. It all comes back to Mosenrath. There's a scientific reason why Wuya reminded me of him, because she is the next incarnation of him. And if you're wondering, where did Bill and Bob go after that? I know they worked on some episodes of the Big Hero 6 series, including High Voltage's debut, which makes me super dang happy, because Big Hero 6 has, like, all the best modern cartoon villains I've seen in recent years. Like, I have not gotten into Owl House or Amphibia one bit, even though I know a lot of people have. Big Hero 6 has been my Amphibia. Like, I'm like, I don't care about those guys. I care about the purple mad scientist. I care about Obake. That's my, why is no one talking about this one? Who's Belos? Who's Andreas? Why aren't you talking about Obake? No, seriously though, love who you want. Those villains hit different people in different ways. Just know that the Big Hero 6 crowd was mine. And I pick out Obake because he's the leader, but really, Hard Light is my man's. He's Gamer Mysterio. We'll hopefully talk more about that in an episode later on down the line. Because this project is never dead. It is only slow. At any rate. So, Bill and Bob. We've been over Bill and Bob. That's basically how Wuya got into my gallery. And I think what eventually gave her the edge over Spicer is because of this connection to Mosenrath, and because I did have the ship for them, cringy as it was going to be a temporary ship in the Elements of Harmony fanfiction. I was going to have Mosenrath get with the Huntsman, break up with the Huntsman, have a horrible time, get with Wuya, break up with Wuya, have a horrible time, and then finally Twilight and Mosenrath settle their will they or won't they. And it was just buckets of cringe. But it meant that I had Wuya hanging around as, this is one of Mosenrath's partners. She's important. And, as that time went on, I'm like, she fits with Mim. Because they're both about, just doing evil for its own sake. And she fits with Yzma. Because, they're divas who warp their reality to redecorate to their aesthetic. And later on, that's why I have the two of them kissing. As they should be. They are true lovers. I will fight you. No, I won't fight you. I won't fight you. All your ships are valid. But mine's extra valid to me. That's what I'm saying. And basically, she worked herself into the framework of them. The original faction name for them in Elements was going to be Whammy, because I didn't have Snatcher or Roman yet, and they provided the AR. But you'll notice that the acronym only works if it starts with a W, as does WHAM ARMY. And actually, when I was first getting TBTC off the ground back in 2016, I actually hadn't finished the entirety of Shaolin Showdown. So I did a full show rewatch in order to, get Wuya back into my head. And actually there was a point at which I wanted to write, but I hadn't finished the show yet. So I was half considering just pushing forth without her. We almost didn't have her. And maybe you can see that in the early arcs where I kind of, because we have a more disjointed history, she kind of got neglected a bit. And I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, Wuya. You were one of my children, and I never want to do you wrong again. But it's funny to think that, there was a point where she was, up for consideration. I didn't even know if she was going to be one of the court. There could have just been 7. And now it's like, the hell you mean I almost did this without Wuya? She's like one of the 2 actual responsible adults in the Corps, the other's huntsman. And she starts the acronym. She's the larger than life, the partier, the flashiest of the villains. I had to make her a backstory because she doesn't have one. Well, except, we know she fought Dashi and Dashi imprisoned her in the box. That's not a backstory. That's one lore event. No, I had to give her an equivalent to Disdain. So I made up an original character who was her father several thousands of years ago, and was like, oh, you're a girl, so I can't teach you magic. And he was an all-around horrible guy, so she killed him. And he was named the Shadow Sorcerer because this is around the time that Shaolin Chronicles dropped. Shaolin Chronicles is one of the worst things on television. It's the Teen Titans Go of Shaolin Showdown. It's what it is. They, instead of fixing some of the outdated aspects of the old show, they kind of just made them worse. They did not realize at all what makes Jack Spicer funny. They just turned him into the lull to random man-child. I say random things and you laugh, except we don't because it's not funny. I've tried to watch some of the episodes that have Wuya in them. She's barely in the show, and when she is, it's very dry and soulless. The only thing of value I found for her is that with the new villain OC, Shadow, the 2 of them had, kind of a homoerotic time together. So I'm like, I was not completely off base that she likes girls. But then again, if you go to the original series, you can see that between her and Catnip Bay already. So I guess we didn't need Shadow. But the fact that Shadow was such a divisive character and point of contention in the fandom at that point actually inspired me. I don't want to use the literal Shadow because she's not fun to me. She's from a show that doesn't know humor and it doesn't really know how to work with its villains. So, maybe if she had been made back in the time of the original run, she could have been something. But as it stands, the Chronicles writers don't know what they're doing. And so she's kind of got a cool design, but otherwise she's a nothing burger. She's nothing. So I'm like, let's at least repurpose the concept. So Wuya's sexist dad, I call him the Shadow Sorcerer. He is named for Shadow, the divisive character from Chronicles, who I am now certainly never going to include because I made her a man, and I made her a sexist, and I made her Wuya's horrible, abusive father that she had to kill. And I don't really regret doing this, because, like I said, Chronicles Shadow was just nothing. So, yeah. And that's, I guess, one of my biggest headcanons that I have about her. I've had to flesh out a lot of stuff for her because, Shaolin Showdown's great, but it's also very surface level. You don't get too deep into the backstories on a lot of your villains. You know, it's very keeps a very lighthearted tone even during the angst arcs. Like, there's not a lot of emotional plumbing, which I appreciate on a good day because I like that it can just be kind of a turn your brain off show. But sometimes it's like, I want a little more meat to this. And other shows have managed to have the same levity, but also have a little more meat. And so I have to give Wuya something like the Shadow Sorcerer to fill it out. I just want to give her... I want to do more, actually, as I'm thinking on it. I want to do more things that get into her psyche. Like, why is she the way she is? What makes her tick? And now that I'm recording this episode, like, that might be my drive to do just that. We might have a story arc for her coming up soon just because I feel like it. Because I'm talking about her, I'm like, you know what? Still, we don't have a lot on her. I could give her more. I can give her more headcanons. For now, she's just the best girlfriend Yzma could ask for, really. And, I don't know that I'd still call Wuya a self-identifier, mostly because she is so much that serious and, frankly, competent side that, she's much more badass than I am or will ever be. And that's okay. I'm okay being an Yzma type. But it means that I gravitate far more to identifying with Yzma than with Wuya, and then Snatcher's there, so then none of that matters anyway, because I'm him. And, yeah, so I guess the one thing that we haven't addressed is, as I've said, the final season of Shaolin Showdown is a fight for who's the actual villain of the series. And Wuya, historically, is not very good at keeping alliances. The Heilin are sort of a group in canon. Especially the finale, has this symbolic lineup of them. And then, like, for my fanfiction verse, I made that, not a metaphor. Like, they were literally all there. But in canon, I'm pretty sure it's just symbolic. You had a lineup of all of them. And then Azrai is finally gifted the title of the leader of the Shaolin Warriors, which he deserves because he did introspection on himself and he learned to overcome his own flaws. I love you, Rai! Basically, the finale ends on the two sides walking into another fight and then cut to black. It's like, oh, and the adventures continue. It's just a really nice place to leave a finale. It's like we wrapped up the action for the arcs that were left dangling, and now it's just like you get to imagine your own thing. Unless we do a really shitty reboot, which they did. So we ignore it. Now, the point I'm driving at is that Wuya has always been an opportunist. Like I said, she's even on and off again with Jack Spicer, who is her most longtime partner. She is basically, she's a traitor. She's a traitor by nature. So, putting her in a group where she has to be friends with and loyal to other villains that compete with her might not seem like a natural writing decision. And sometimes I kind of hint at addressing that. I haven't really done an arc about it openly, but, she has, in my mind, kind of thought before, I'm only with these chumps until something better comes along. Nothing better ever came along. And again, like with Jack, it's like, oh no, I'm attached to all of you. How did this happen? I didn't want this, but here it is. I like you guys, so I guess I gotta stay here. And they've been together for so long at this point that it's like, she stopped even questioning it. It's like, I don't even want to pretend that I hate liking you guys anymore. We're just pals. You guys get me. But to me, it has always felt like, even though she doesn't outwardly show it, it's kind of been me putting her in this place of vulnerability because she doesn't normally rely on others. She steps on others to get to the higher heights, but ultimately Wuya is a self-driven woman, and having actual friends is a foreign concept for her. I had her, reconnect with the Heilin. I said that yes, her palling around with Katnipe, Tobimura, and Hannibal, that was all real. She liked doing that. But she, didn't have to go back to them. And it was really only after she spent time with her newfound family that she regained her appreciation for the old one. She went back to pick up the other Halen after her new friends taught her how to be in a found family. And, the the doylist reasoning for that is that I didn't want to throw all the Halen at the beginning of the fic. I wanted to start with Wuya and then bring the other Halen eventually. But it made for a very good Watsonian perspective as well, that Wuya needed to have her walls broken down. She needed to be shown, yeah, it's okay that I'm loyal to other people. I don't need to rely on them in order to be loyal to them and like them. And, that's what it's all about. It's what the story's all about, is exploring friendships, especially friendships you make as an adult in a harsh and unforgiving world. Yeah, you see how this story is a mirror of my psyche. You absolutely do. And that, I believe, just wraps it up for Wuya. And, yeah, I guess, besides the character takeaways, I hope you have all learned from this episode that Bill Mott's and Bob Roth's fingerprints are everywhere in animation. Last I heard, they're working on Ghost and Molly McGee, which I really need to catch up on because I saw the first couple eps and that one was super fun. So be on the lookout and keep your ears open for the Citadel of Doom.